Welcome to the Eye on Annapolis Local Business Spotlight. There are thousands of locally owned businesses in the area, some small and some large. Some you may know and others you don't. But one thing they all have in common is a great story, and we want to share it with you. Join us every Saturday as we talk to the founders, the owners, and the managers of local businesses you have come to know and love, and those you will come to know and love. Now here's your host, John Frenay, with this week's Local Business Spotlight.
Well, hopefully everybody knows about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. If you don't, you're going to learn a little bit more about it today. Unfortunately, we don't have Dolly Parton with us, but we have the two next best things with us. We've got Paula Hendry and Tina McKnight, who are the executive director and board member for the Imagination Library, the chapter up here in Anne Arundel County. Thank you guys so much for inviting me here. And I had no idea it was bigger than a foundation that Dolly Parton set up in Tennessee to send books to kids. And that's so exciting.
Well, I think Dolly Parton is so smart because what she did was she set up this foundation that mails books to kids, but she set it up with the idea that local organizations, local affiliates would take responsibility for their own area. So the national organization chooses the books and does the administrative work. And locally, we register children to the program, and then we find money to support the program. So we're actually paying for the books and for the mailing locally. But because the entire National Foundation, and it's really international, sends 3 million books out every month.
Oh,
The cost per book per child is really low. It just went up recently to $2.60, which includes mailing and the book itself.
for those that are not familiar, shame on you, but imaginationlibrary.com is the main website, and you can search for the local chapter here in Anne Arundel County. It has a big, long URL. The search for a local chapter is probably the best thing to do off of the main one. But this was established back in 1995, and it sends books to kids from birth through age 5, right?
Yes.
To promote literacy. And actually, we just spoke with the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council actually this week. And then we talked with Start the Adventure in Reading. And we've done a number of literacy-focused podcasts.
Great.
This is exciting that there's so many resources that are out there for people to become just voracious readers. Okay, so explain the program. I thought that this was just something that you signed up and they sent you books. And that is not, I mean, you said there's a cost to do it now?
Well, it's actually free to anyone who signs up. But we have to raise the money, which is now $31 per child per year, to support the printing and the mailing of the books.
Okay, so that's where your job comes in as a local chapter.
And that's, yes.
Okay.
Our two big jobs are finding children and registering them. So we don't cover all of Anne Arundel County. We sort of targeted our initiative towards areas where there are a lot of low-income kids, where there are a lot of English language learning families, and where there are a lot of families whose older siblings don't necessarily read on grade level. So that's our target.
How did you get involved in this?
I met someone in Easton who was doing this. And so when the Eastern Shore, most counties on the Eastern Shore have this on a county-wide basis. They get support from United Way and other large grantors. And so this is about 6 counties or 7 counties on the Eastern Shore. And it's also through PG County and Howard County and Charles County. But there was nothing in Anne Arundel County. So I encountered this woman 2 different years. And I said, well, we don't have that in Arundel County. And she said, well, you ought to start it. So I did. And I was a school librarian for 18 years at Tyler Heights Elementary. It was a wonderful experience. And my passion really became getting books into kids' hands. So for a while, starting in 2009, for about 10 years, we had a book motorcycle where we got used books that were in good condition, and we put them in my car trunk and a friend's car trunk. We went out every Friday and gave out books in the community, at like 5 or 6 different locations. So it's just, and then having books, of course, as a librarian, having books kids can check out, but then just having books that kids can have, and especially books that they would choose was really like just a wonderful thing.
To build their love for reading.
Exactly, because I feel like reading is so great. We just have to help kids find books that they are going to like, not necessarily the kind of books that we want them to read.
And it's more than just building the love for reading. It's really building those early skills that, eventually they need in order to learn to read. So my introduction to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library really came when I had my first grandchildren. So my grandson was born, and a month after he was born, this book appeared in the mail. And I read the book to him and didn't think a whole lot of it. I thought maybe it was a book from the hospital. And then the second month, another book appeared in his name. And this time I flipped the book over on the back and realized that there was a National Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And in D.C., as she talked about other locales, if you were born in a D.C. hospital, you are automatically enrolled in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So my grandchildren had been a part of this even before I knew that it existed. And so my association with the Annapolis Area Imagination Library, as Paula said, we both worked at Tyler Heights Elementary. I was a principal. I hired her as my media specialist.
Oh my gosh.
And then we reconnected over this project. Could have been reverse roles.
What a great way to build a friendship. Wow.
That's right.
Wow. So, where are the other chapters? You said this is Annapolis, and I know it's not all of Anne Arundel County, and I get that. I mean, there's certain neighborhoods and communities that are probably affluent enough that, the parents can handle it on their own, and there's such a great need for that in lower income communities as well, because unfortunately, as with everything, they tend to fall through the cracks. It's a lot easier to fall through the cracks when you're living in a lower income, a disadvantaged community than it is if you're living in some sort of an affluent community. And to be able to put a book in the hands and it really hit home for me when I was talking with the Literacy Council, and they work with adults and they work in the prisons and stuff like that. But they said that, imagine not being able to read a job application. And I'm not talking about for, enjoyment, which is primarily what I imagine the Imagination Library is. I'm not talking about a textbook. What about a form at your doctor's office? You can probably get away with a stop sign. Okay, it's red and octagonal shaped. We know what that kind of means. But to be able to go through life without the ability to understand and comprehend, I mean, what you guys are giving is just such a gift to children at such a great period of time in their lives.
Well, I think the period of time in their lives is really the key, because as we like to think about it, we're a preventive organization versus being a remedial organization. So what they have found is that having books in the home is the most powerful way for kids to be ready to learn how to read once they enter school. And as Tina mentioned, kids need early literacy skills to recognize that those squiggles are letters, and then to learn some letter sounds and how to hold a book and how a story goes. And if they enter school without those literacy skills, they're really already behind. Then the second aspect of it is just to develop that desire to learn to read. Because as a 4 or a 5-year-old, when you enter school and you don't really want to learn how to read, it's a job. And they're making you work and learn these letters or letter names or the letter sounds. It's hard work. But if you've learned to enjoy books, that books are amazing and wonderful and fun, then when you arrive at school at age 4, age 5, you're eager to learn how to read. So that's actually the key. So having books in the home is really the best way that we get kids ready for kindergarten. And you might think, well, just having a book in the home. But what happens is when the books are there, even if parents have not been doing shared reading with their child, after a few months, they start to do shared reading, and they start to do shared reading on the same number of times that people in other communities do. And the longer they're in the program, the more shared reading they do. So we want kids to be ready to read when they get to kindergarten. We want them to have finished kindergarten and be right where they're supposed to be. So when they're entering first grade, second grade, third grade, they're right on grade level. Because if they get behind, they generally stay behind. And we spend untold number of millions of dollars trying to catch kids up, whereas we might be better off trying to make sure they don't get behind in the first place.
Well, that makes sense. That makes all the sense in the world. And it's funny you're talking about, the love for reading. And I mean, aside from the last day of school for summer, I think my favorite days were the Scholastic book fairs. My mom and dad probably didn't think so because I'd always have that little form filled out and it's like, here, I need the check for whatever it was. But it's interesting. You mentioned that you've got to get the books that the kids enjoy. I'm a perfect example of that. And my girlfriend has no idea why I won't read a fiction book. I will read biographies. I'll read history. I'll read news. I'll read, I love to read. But once you get into science fiction and made up stories and stuff like that, I zone out for whatever reason. And that's just a preference with me. I mean, yet I know so many people that would totally sit down with just a great novel that's, you talked about getting ahead of the grade level or getting them at grade level, moving through their career, their educational career. How does the Imagination Library deal with somebody that is not at grade level or don't?
So one thing is that there's a variety of books that go out every year. Like there's some nonfiction books. Recently there was a book about rainbows, another book about birds. Some of the books are bilingual. So the books are varied so that they reach the interest level of the child. And another comment we've gotten from parents a lot is that the books are right on level. Two mothers said to me, when I go to the library and I go to the bookstore, I don't really know what kind of books to buy to get my child. But the books from the Imagination Library just really catch his or her interest. So they're very well selected for that age group, and they're a variety. So the kids are going to find things that they like.
And they are books that remain in the home. So you are building for that family a home library. So if you've got more than one child, 0 through 5, they each get a book every month. So you have the potential of building a library of, you're talking 0 through 5, 12 books a year.
12 books a year.
You've got 6 books. And if you've got 2 kids, you could build a library of 120 books. And I dare say that children beyond 5 are reading those books still, because when they're during the early years, their parents are reading with them. But then they move to a stage where they're
big kids.
They're retelling the stories and then they're reading those books. And they're still a part of that family. So the influence, I think, of the later years is that they built a home library that they can continue to experience. And I dare say that the relationship with some of those books is something that is lasting.
And I've had several parents tell me after their child has graduated and no longer receives books that, he won't let me throw away the Dolly Parton books. He won't let me give those away. Or those are the books that my child is always carrying around the house. Or those are the books that my child makes me read over and over and over again. So one really shocking thing that I read is that a research study found that 61% of low-income families have no books in their home. And then I'm thinking, okay, so the other 39% of low-income families, how many books do they have? They have more than 0. How many more than 0? Maybe 1 or 2. And if you think about being a child with no books in your home, what is your attitude towards learning and reading when you enter school? And this is more than half of families have 0 books. So I feel like we're kind of leveling the playing field a little bit by putting high quality books into the hands of parents who often don't have the transportation or the time or the habit of going to the library and having, they tell us, oh yeah, these books are perfect. I read them almost every night with my daughter. And if I don't, one of my other children does. Or another Latina woman said, oh, my daughter and I love those books. We read them every night together. So these are the key experiences that are going to help kids, because we know that shared reading helps kids develop their memory, their imagination, their attention span, their vocabulary. And not only that, kids that read, have a shared reading experience like 3 times a week are much more likely to know their letter sounds and their letter names and have a bigger vocabulary.
Because English is such an easy language to learn, right?
Well, if you think about it, if you're only talking to your child and you're not reading, what's the vocabulary? Clean your room up.
And research says that kids should hear about 1,000 books read to them before they start kindergarten.
Wow.
Now, not 1,000 individual books, different books, but 1,000 books, some which they've heard 20, 30, 40 times.
999 times.
That's building that vocabulary. And if you don't have any books, 0 through 5, you're not going to have that experience at all.
And think about what your vocabulary is just going to be limited to. Pick up your clothes. Let's get ready to go. What do you want to eat?
Hurry up.
But when you read a book, you get a much broader vocabulary. And I read something really interesting recently that if you look at the vocabulary of kindergarten students, you can predict their reading comprehension in 11th grade. So all of these things that happen between birth through 5, just the development of vocabulary and an understanding of the world is important, but just the physical development of the brain is critical in those years.
And I love that it's called Imagination Library, because when you get into a book, you're in a different world. And whether that's a fiction world or a nonfiction world or a scientific world or whatever it may be, it's stimulating your brain and everything else. I mean, you talked about how you learn the languages. I remember in 3rd grade or something, there was some kind of a math program I needed to read out loud, and I was like, okay, well, 1,214 is a 4-digit number. And the whole class laughed at me, even the teacher. And I'm like, what? And they said, do you mean digit? And I'm like, oh, man. I mean, I had no idea what it was. I mean, just even as an adult, I remember I spelled fanatic. And maybe this is just because I was from Philadelphia, but I spelled it with a PH because that was the... So I can see how it's so important to be able to see that. And, as these children are getting up closer to 5, I guess at that point, I mean, I know with my kids, I was like, well, why don't you, I'm tired of Good Night, man. Why don't you read a little bit of it for me? Not that they were reading, they were probably just spewing it out from rote, but
Right.
They were telling.
but they would sit there and look and go like, literacy, and you've got that opportunity to get into that imagination that they've got and help them grow. I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, why? I guess you're limited to 5 years old just because that's when they're jumping into kindergarten. And
Right.
it's sort of like a relay race.
I think the other thing is, and there is really a huge demand for this program throughout the county. I really get several calls a week or emails saying, I live in such and such an area. Do you have the program here? And we can't have it everywhere. So there's really a huge demand. And there are often parents who say, well, my kid's 7 or 10 or 14 and they love books too. Well, one thing is once kids get older, their tastes in books really diverge a lot. So it would be really hard to satisfy every 7-year-old with a certain book a month. And then the second thing is once they're in school, in Anne Arundel County, we have very good school libraries.
You've got the resources.
Yeah, so they have resources at school, and every classroom has, we have a wonderful school system. Every classroom has lots of books. Every school library has lots of books.
Take-home programs for books also.
And I do want to throw a big shout out to Skip Ald and his team over at the Anne Arundel County Libraries, because they're just a wonderful resource as well.
Yes.
I mean, I used to remember just fearing walking in the library just because I was bad about returning books. And it was like, okay, Mr. Pernay, well, that's $3,812 that but they've eliminated the late fees now. So
Right.
There's no reason. And in some instances, they can actually have books brought to you. If
Wow.
if you have, it's not to everybody, but it's, if you live with somebody that is, transportation issues and stuff like that.
So one of the specific things we're trying to do is improve kindergarten readiness in Anne Arundel County. And it's actually what we've been talking about, early literacy skills. But there's an assessment that kindergarten teachers do on every 5-year-old in Anne Arundel County called the Maryland Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. And statewide, it's under 50% of kids pass this or considered ready for kindergarten. And in Anne Arundel County, it's 46%. But when you go to low-income kids, only 27% of 5-year-olds are considered ready for kindergarten. And English language learning families, it's 11%. And a main element of that is reading. So the library has been doing a lot for kindergarten readiness. And on their website, they have a kindergarten readiness section, and they have read 1,000 books by age 5. And also our county executive has made it his goal to improve kindergarten readiness from this 46% to 76%. And he has given the library extra resources to do that. So we're jumping on that effort. But I think we're reaching kids right in their home. So we're reaching kids that are not able or or going to the library for whatever reason, the book is coming right there to their home. And what we've done in the past year, we went to about 65 different events, food banks, a diaper bank, lots of school events, lots of resource fairs all around the county in these low-income areas or areas where the reading scores are low, and met parents and signed them up for these programs. So we're trying to serve people that might not otherwise get these books or participate in this literacy world.
Well, I was at your website again, imaginationlibrary.com, and then you can find the one for the Annapolis area. But it says that you've served, according to the website, 3,750 plus people in this area.
Yes.
It's crazy.
It's really crazy, and the cost just went up. So we really are. We're trying to raise money now so we can continue to serve. It's just about 3,800 kids.
Okay, and so we can donate money.
Yes.
And I mean, and obviously you're looking for grants, and you're looking for, every possible way,
right,
to scrounge up the money, like any nonprofit is at this point. But I mean, is there a way to do that on the website? Does that go to the national organization and filter down?
Well, if you go to imaginationlibrary.com and you go to donate, it'll take you to a donation page. And then it asks you, would you like to designate this money for a local area? And please say yes. Otherwise, it just goes to the National Foundation, which I think Dolly Parton herself can pretty much cover without having to miss any meals. Yeah. So if you go to donate and then you designate it, and then you can put in the Annapolis zip code 21401, or just look for Maryland, Annapolis area. Okay. And then we will get the donation.
Okay. And that's a very easy way to do that. Again, imaginationlibrary.com. And the cost to get these books, and I know you said they just went up, but I mean, realistically, the cost to get these books in the hands of a child in such a, I don't want to use the word vulnerable, but such an impressionable period is really not a lot when you're talking a couple dollars. So
yeah, $31 for a 1 year. Was about $150 for a child from birth to 5.
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. And we should do better.
And the other thing is that we're a totally volunteer organization. So all the money that we receive goes directly towards supporting kids.
And not as executive director, you're not pulling in $300,000?
No.
No. As a board member, you're not pulling in that 90?
Zero.
They don't give you cars?
No.
Private jets, boats, nothing?
Nothing. Not even eat for printing.
Got to buy our own lunches when we go on.
That's right. Not even a free lunch.
Well, the areas that you serve, Annapolis, Fort Meade.
And Fort Meade, I have to say, we got a gift from the Government Employees Health Association, GEHA, and they're helping us serve Fort Meade. And there may be people that aren't aware that military families, 25% of military families are food insecure. So, of course, we're proud to serve military families, but we're also eager to support any group where 25% are not able to eat easily, regularly.
True. Southern Anne Arundel County?
Certain areas of Southern Anne Arundel County, particularly areas, there's some areas with some trailer parks and lots of English language learning families.
Okay, Western Anne Arundel County?
Yeah, and not all the Western Anne Arundel County, certain school district areas where the reading scores. So what we do is we look at the reading scores at the elementary level, and we're not helping those students, but we're trying to help their younger siblings develop those skills so when they're in 3rd to 5th grade, they will be proficient readers.
That's smart, because you said in that assessment in the kindergarten, you could give them a good idea of what their reading level is going to be in 11th grade. And then Brooklyn Park is another one.
Brooklyn Park has the highest poverty rate of any zip code in the county. It's about 25%. And then recently in May, we added Glen Burnie, which is very exciting. Now, Glen Burnie is not necessarily a super low income, area of the county, but the reading scores in the elementary schools are not high. When you look at the Maryland report card and you look at the schools in Glen Burnie, generally between 25 and 30% of the children in 3rd through 5th grade read on grade level. In other words, 70 to 75% of the children in most of the Glen Burnie schools are not reading on grade level. So we're interested in being there so that we can help bring that number up of the kids that are proficient.
Question for you as a retired librarian or media specialist, or I'm not sure whatever the current term may be. How difficult is it when you have somebody that is not reading at grade level to bring them up? I mean, is there a way
I think Gina should answer that question.
Let me just say that remediation for children who are starting not ready to read is very difficult and very expensive. When you compare what we're doing with very limited funds to get those students ready, you're talking staff, you're talking materials, you're talking, working with families. And it's hard work. It's hard work for teachers, it's hard work for students. And we really want learning to be, a fun experience. To start school behind, where it's a struggle to learn. The research shows that, students who start behind, it impacts graduation rates. It impacts, their future success in terms of learning, beyond the elementary and high school years. Research shows that it impacts, whether or not drug use becomes a problem, whether or not, they will impact the legal system in terms of, incarceration. So the impact of starting school not ready isn't that you're impacting the test scores for kindergartners for that 1 year. It becomes cumulative as you go through, and it is very difficult to remediate.
It's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
And I've got to think that if you get into a remediation type thing where you're trying to catch the students up, as you said, it's not fun for the students. Okay, that's work. That's a drag now. I've got to go to tutoring. I got to stay after for extra help. I'd rather be out playing baseball. I'd rather be out riding my bike or whatever it may be.
And then it's also how they feel about themselves, which impacts, everything that they're doing. It's like, because up to second grade, you're kind of learning to read. But by third grade, you are reading to learn. So everything else that you're doing, you need that skill. And guess what? If you aren't on grade level, every other content area, science, social studies, math, is going to be, your success is going to be impacted by your reading ability.
Reemphasizes how critical a program like this is.
We talk about, there being food deserts. In our communities, we have book deserts. Communities where, as Paula said, that they don't have books 0 through 5. And they're not accessing these wonderful libraries, because you're right. There are incredible library programs in Anne Arundel County, but you got to get there in order to get the books. You've got to know about them. And if you're not accessing that, then 0 through 5, when your brain is the most plastic and growing the most, you're not feeding into that time, those incredibly important foundational ages.
And Gina's point about, how children feel about themselves if they're not able to read. And if you're not able to read, you're not going to be successful in school, but you're also not going to be happy, and you're likely to misbehave, and you're likely to cause trouble. And certainly not every kid who doesn't read well gets involved with drugs or criminal activities, but you're more likely to do those kinds of things because you're not successful in what society is saying is your main job.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Literacy Council, and I remember that she was telling me that the people that come to them as adults are different walks of life. Some may be just, English as second language. Some people just may be becoming some functional illiteracy and trying to figure out how to do it. He says a lot of times we get, perhaps an older Hispanic person or somebody that's just very old says, I've hid this all my life.
Absolutely.
And they're coming in as a down person. They said, I want to read to my grandchild. And they will go to that. I mean, that person may be in there 6 months into the program, but there's somebody that she said they have such a love for learning and reading. Once they get into it and they want to go several years, then we'll let them go several years. But they work with the tutors. But, I can't imagine being 40, 50, 60, whatever years old with grandchildren and thinking that I can't read Stuart Little with them or, Charlotte's Web or,
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because the reason Dolly Parton started this program is because her father wasn't able to read. And I mean, in my opinion, and I think many people agree with me, Dolly Parton is very intelligent, maybe a genius. She's amazing. And I'm sure her father was very intelligent too, but he raised 8 children without the ability to read. And she wanted to honor him with this program.
I had no idea that that's the origin. What's the most rewarding thing about running this program for you? Okay. I mean, I know that you said that, you absolutely love teaching and being in the schools and everything else, but now it's a different ball of wax for you guys. What's the most rewarding aspect of this for you?
Well, having been the former principal of Tyler Heights Elementary, and I left the school quite a while ago and I've retired, I was able to go back through this program and enroll children at that same school where I had been a principal. And at the time, we did not have the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. We didn't have it there. So for me, it's like I can continue to impact Tyler Heights Elementary in this way, but kids throughout the county. To me, the fact that we are helping children to be able to start school off feeling successful, feeling accomplished, feeling like they can learn, there's no better feeling.
That's awesome. What about for you, Paul?
I think Tina said it very well. I love meeting with the parents. I love meeting with the children when we enroll them. And I do spend a lot of time doing paperwork and sitting on the computer. But like today, I was able to deliver some books to some schools that I'm working with to start their pre-K kindergarten children in the program, and just even writing their names out. And I know, just thinking this is a child, and this is a child that's going to really enjoy this first book, The Little Engine That Could, that has a bright blue train on it. And just, as someone who is retired and not able to really work with kids every day, just that I'm still connected with those young children is just a wonderful thing.
You know what I must say? I mean, were you a librarian your whole career?
No, I was a science teacher first.
Okay, science teacher first. And I'm assuming you didn't jump in as principal. You were a teacher too.
I was a teacher for 17 years.
And I will say that you talk about not being able to work with the children every day and how they become a part of you. I will say that the teachers also become part of the children too. And you guys probably know this as well as anybody, but I can rattle off, I'm 62 years old. I can rattle off, half dozen teachers right now. Probably most of them have passed on, but that just made such an impact in my life. I mean, my first one that I remember was 3rd grade, Mrs. Akeley. She seemed probably like 103 to me in 3rd grade at that point. She probably wasn't. But you look that through high school and through college, and you look at these teachers, and the ones that are most memorable, at least for me, are the ones that pushed you, that pushed your limits. Sure, there were some that were just teaching to teach and stuff like that. I mean, you've got, I don't want to say bad apples, but you've got different levels of it. But there are teachers are just so important. And, if you don't know it already, don't ever think that kids get out of your grade or out of your school and sort of forget about you, because they don't. Because I know all 3 of my kids have their favorites and they talk about it. I mean, my son actually goes out and has beers with one of his high school teachers periodically when he comes back down to, now that they're all old enough to be able to do that.
Goes beyond the classroom teacher. I just celebrated a milestone birthday, and one of my students from Tyler Heights, he was in 2nd grade when I was a principal there. He attended my 75th birthday party.
Fantastic.
And we occasionally go out for lunch, just because.
That's got to be so good for you to be able to say, okay, 2nd grade. I mean, how old was this kid?
He is in his 20s now.
In his late 20s.
So I mean, that's just got to be so rewarding for you to sit there and say, I had a part in molding
College graduate.
what this kid has become.
It's that, but you feel like it was your privilege. I mean, teaching is really a hard job. Being a principal is even a harder job. But if it's really your passion, it's such a privilege. I feel like I was so fortunate that I was able to be a teacher for 41 years. I mean, it's such a treasure. It's a wonderful thing.
And it is something that I shared with my teachers because you're right, teaching is an incredibly challenging job. And it's challenging every single day. But every single day that you wake up and you come to work, you have the privilege of impacting the lives of children. And how many other jobs, career fields can say that every single day you had that opportunity.
That's right.
And, to me, it's like something to celebrate every day, even when the days were so difficult, it was hard to get through.
There's hard days everywhere. And just remember, those kids are the ones that are picking our nursing homes at some point. So you want you want to make sure.
Believe it or not, one of my students now works at a car dealership, and whenever I go and have my car serviced, he was a second grade student when I was a teacher, and so it's so funny because he still calls me, this night.
All right, that is something to do with the whole respect and this thing, because way back when in a prior life, I worked with an electrical contractor, and I had to go into they were building, I just had to attend the meeting. They were building an elementary school out in Lancaster County, and I had to go attend this meeting. And it was there with the principal, and the guy was probably 10 years younger than me. And I sat there and I looked at him straight in his face. I said, "Well, Mr. Smith." And I still do it today when I walk into Annapolis High. It's like, "Hi, Mrs. Whalen, how are you?" And it's
John, you brought up something earlier that I thought was really interesting about the Literacy Council, talking about the impact of not being able to read or being able to read. And I was doing a little bit of research recently about the impact of literacy on health. And there's lots and lots of amazing research about that. People who read better take care of their diabetes better, for example. Even people that have different levels of education, when you measure their reading skill, they do better at taking care of maintaining their sugar level if they read better. People do better in all kinds of ways if they read better. People's mental health is better. If they're reading books, they have better mental health. And the most interesting fact I read recently was they did a study in Israel, and they looked at elders, people even older than Tina and me, and they found that the number of books in the home of these elderly people had an effect on their cognitive decline. And people that had had more books in their home as children had their dementia progress at a slower rate.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, you as long as you keep your mind stimulated as an older person,
but somehow that impacted their brain development as a child, which still bore fruit 60, 70 years later.
That's wild. But it's funny that you talk about with the health, and I mean, you sit there and you think about the resources that we have now at this point. I mean, we all have these little smartphones, so we've got these. There's no more encyclopedias that we have to go thumbing through, and no more card catalogs. And we've got all this information here. And I mean, you sit there and you think, okay, well, gosh, I've got this grumbling in my stomach. I'll just go on my phone and go up to WebMD and realize that I've got some kind of crazy cancer. And I mean, I'll go off the deep end and go to my doctor with that. But again, to be able to read that and say, okay, well, hey, gosh, there's grumbling in your stomach. It could be just, acid reflux. It could be this. It could be something more serious and stuff like that. And then naturally you look, say, okay, well, yeah, it's getting a little bit better. And, you can somewhat. And I totally get that you're more in tune to your health and you're more healthy. You're more apt to go to a doctor to seek help. You're
probably keeping up a little better with trends in nutrition,
sure,
and things that we learn about that are good or bad for our health. You probably make more money if you can read. But then also, if you do go to the doctor, you can fill out the forms better to give them better information, and you can follow the directions a lot better if you're able to read them.
Sure.
So it's a major issue in the health field. Illiteracy really does have big impacts on people's health.
Man, there's such far-reaching consequences for not to do that.
Cumulative impact of not starting off early with those early learning skills lasts a lifetime.
Dolly was ahead of the game, that's for sure. Now, how can we support? We talked about donating. We can go to imaginationlibrary.com, pick donate, and then pick Annapolis area or put the zip code in
Right.
to do that. And that's the easy way. That gets some money into the pockets, which goes right into the books and right into the postage to get them right into somebody's home to
Right.
change the life of a child.
Right. Or you can go to our website is annapolisimagination.org, and you can go there. There's a donate link there and other donation information there.
But I think also you kind of started off saying that you didn't realize there were these local affiliates. And I think once you find out about the Annapolis Area Imagination Library, spread the word. Let other people know that it exists, because a lot of folks don't know that we exist. And so people are taking advantage. Now, of course, we've got to be sure that our local funding keeps up with the number
With the need, sure.
that we are enrolling, because, as Paula said, the need is far greater than the kids that we're reaching right now.
That's true. Well, and you'd mentioned earlier, Paula, too, that we've just got so many resources in the county and the libraries and everything else. And as I do more and more of these podcasts with different organizations and different businesses and stuff like that, it's amazing to me exactly how wealthy, and I don't talk in terms of money, this county is as far as the resources. If I am an addict, I've got a resource. If I am an abuser, I've got a resource. If I am abused, I have a resource. If I am not reading, I have plenty of resources. If I want to learn how to play a violin, I can go to the library and check out a violin and figure out how to play it. If I want to read newspapers and I can't afford to buy newspapers, I can get a library card for free and I can read there's just so many resources that are out there. We really need to do a better job of making sure everybody knows that they are available.
That's true. That's very true. One thing, though, is in my experience, I've come in contact with a lot of families where people are struggling and working one or two jobs, and they don't really have the time to go out to the library. They're exhausted. They're coming home, and they're, after working 8 or 10 hours, they're cooking food and cleaning. And, so I think what we're doing, putting books right there in their homes and making it easy for them to support their child's development is really important.
It's huge. It's huge.
But I think also getting the word out gets the word out to those who will support the work that we're doing, because, for $3,000, you can support 100 children getting a book every month for a year. And I think that there is just a wide number of folks that would say, gosh, I could do that. I can do that. Or for $300, I can support 10 children for 1 year.
Or 3,000.
So it's an amount that, given the wealth that's in our county, that a lot of folks, businesses and individuals, that could get behind if they knew that we existed.
And you think about what the collective impact would be to have everybody coming into kindergarten next year, or whatever year it may be, to be reading on that first grade level throughout and the second grade, the third grade, the fourth grade, all the way through high school.
Then they could all reach their potential.
Well, I know, Paula, you mentioned that it's a all volunteer organization. There's no private jets or anything like that. And I mean, it sounds to me like it's a small but mighty organization.
Yes.
With, hunting down the grants, hunting down the, everything else that's there. I mean, so I'm guessing that you probably don't need, boots on the ground type volunteers, but you could probably use an army of cheerleaders.
Yeah, and we do have some cheerleaders that are really doing a great job.
Yeah, and I think that if our funding, met our need, we probably would need more boots on the ground also. But I think we're kind of at that point where, our funding is kind of maxed in terms of, the number of children that we're serving. So it depends on, our projected growth in terms of numbers of children. We'd love to be able to serve all the needs, but funding is going to be contingent.
That's critical. And again, you mentioned, we talked about 3,750 readers served about there. I mean, I'm sure that's hard to come up with a number. Do you have any idea what the need is in the county? Would you venture to guess? I mean, I'm sure that's not a number that's
Could be certainly 30,000. something like that. I mean, I could find a number for you. No, I could find a number for you.
You said 30,000. Is that a number that I should go like, oh, what are you, nuts? Or is that a number that's like within the ballpark?
It's
Probably you figure that 25% of children in these targeted areas are starting school not on grade level. So, or 75% are not on grade level, right? Rather than 25% are. Then you're saying 75% of the children in those targeted areas. I would say that number is probably
As I think about that now,
conservative.
I'm thinking with the school district, 90,000 and, divided among 12 grades, 12 grades, and wow. And then take that 25%.
So about half of that, because we have 5 years before school, right? So we're talking about 5 years. So 5/12, whatever. So it's about half of that. So yeah, it's about 45, 50,000. And then the percentage in need. So 30,000 is it's a reasonable number.
Totally blow my mind.
One thing that Tina alluded to is we more than doubled in the past year. So December of 2023, we were serving about 1,700 kids. And now we're serving 3,800 kids. So we've more than doubled in 12 months.
And we are at the point where we are having to turn away requests for us to attend events where we could potentially sign up children.
Yes, which is very
funding is at that critical point. We've got to be sure that we can meet our commitment to the children that we signed up to give them or send them their book every month until they're 5. And so, we now know that there's need that we absolutely are not meeting because we cannot respond to the request.
Yes, we had to turn down several events already in the past. In November and December, we had to turn down 6 or 8 different events that we could have been signing up children at, which is really our passion. That's the most fun part of what we do, but we really can't sign any more children up at this point.
Well, I want to thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Not for me, probably not for anybody that's listening to this, but for some little child that's between birth and 5 that's getting a huge leg up on life because of your efforts. And the efforts of Dolly Parton, who's a wonderful national treasure in and of her own right. AnnapolisImagination.org is the easy URL that'll come directly here. Or you can go to imaginationlibrary.com and do a location finder as well. The amount of money that can related to the amount of the impact is insignificant. Donate if you can.
I just think if you think about the high quality book that we're sending a child that's very colorful, educationally sound, new, attractive, for $2.60, you would be paying $8 to $10 for sure at a store for that book. And that $2.60 covers the printing of the book and the mailing of the book to the child's home. So it's an incredible bargain.
And just imagine that child every month anticipating something coming to their home with their name on it. It's theirs. It's their mail. So, first off, it's this gift that comes, and then this gift keeps giving.
And when they get into kindergarten, they've got a 60-volume library to start off their life. AnnapolisImagination.org. Go check it out. If you have a few dollars to spare, highly encouraged, because, again, if we can catch this early, it can do a world of good. And I want to thank you guys so much for your time today. And more importantly, I want to thank you for taking the effort to do this.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's Local Business Spotlight. Please make sure to visit eyeonannapolis.net for all your local news, events, and opinion. And in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the Eye on Annapolis Daily News Brief, where we bring you all the day's local news direct to your phone, tablet, or computer in about 10 minutes. It comes to you at 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.